Thank you, Alan. Lovely to be back with you all. Me again, sorry. So, for this talk, we're going to discuss pitfalls of restrictive diets. So, my details as per before, no disclosures either for this talk. Before we start, I just want to take a moment for everyone to pause. As a trigger warning. If anyone might feel uncomfortable where we might go talking about diets and restricting, then you are most welcome to excuse yourself from the room at this moment, or anyone that you maybe feel like little ears that you won't want to hear the talk. And then if at any point during the talk you would like to exit the room, feel free to get up. I actually can't see anyone out there, so I won't notice. And secondly is be really kind to yourself. If you have already been restricting foods or restricting your diet to this point, it's likely come from a place of you just want to make yourself feel better. Or maybe you've had support in your clinical care team, or anyone else in your specialist multidisciplinary team has also been wanting you just to feel better and manage symptoms. And there's no rights or wrongs in your place of wanting to help yourself, but we can learn to better serve and move forward a little bit more positively with our diet. So I want everyone just to take a second to ponder this picture. It's obviously not covering all the foods out there, and I didn't find a slide for cake, but we've got some wonderful groups of foods. So just really look at those and have your own thoughts about what that might mean to you. But what it is dietary diversity. We've got a little bit from every food group. And dietary diversity is literally your body's building blocks. If we did not eat and drink, we would sadly not be able to sustain life. And dietary diversity is literally the number of different food groups consumed in any given period. So we're not necessarily looking at a meal or one day or 1 month. It's any given period. So our diverse foods can be broken down into our macronutrients, which is like our big guys, our fats, our proteins, our carbohydrates, which I'd imagine all of you have heard at some point. And then we have our micronutrients, which are smaller molecules, our vitamins and our minerals, and we need a varying different degree of intake of these, some daily, some just weekly, monthly. And then our soluble and insoluble dietary fibres. And then we have another layer when we're looking at dietary diversity, which are our compounds, which are phytochemicals, the polyphenols, flavonoids and isoflavonoids, and then antioxidants, which form two components. They're enzymatic and non-enzymatic, and we could do an hour's talk on just that actually, but for the purpose of this is your group of food that we're looking at for diverse foods. So what does it mean to have consume a diverse diet? We're looking for nutrient adequacy for health. We're looking at nutrient adequacy for chronic health. We're looking to support our metabolic functions, our hormone regulation, and then all the lovely bacteria that makes up our gut microbiota and the full composition, which also includes yeasts and viruses. And we're looking to support our immune pathways, energy production, and then mental health. And I've left mental health very broad because A, we just don't know enough research, and B, that then falls into many areas. And I won't be delving into that side of mental health with restricted diets at this point because it slightly goes over the scope of this talk. So we might go from a picture of many delicious foods, all yummy, yummy, but we might be living with Ehlers-Danlos or hypermobility spectrum disorder, and we may have a lot of comorbidities that have formed our lived experiences and our diagnosis. So we might have GI concerns, including slow motility. We may have our autonomic system issues, which may include dysautonomia and POTS. We might also sort of attracted, shall we say, some food and environmental sensitivities, and the pathways for that is actually quite complicated, somewhat unknown in research, but very valid. We might also have a medical diagnosis or presentation of mast cell activation syndromes or disorders, and we might find that we have problems with mast cell stabilization when it comes to foods we eat. We might also have jaw issues for our TMJ joint or wider oral health of teeth. Pain, fatigue, we may be neurodivergent, which is really, really important, and we're thankfully gaining much more knowledge about how that interplays with food choices. We might also have physical barriers to food intake, and what I mean by this is Your wrists hurt, your hands hurt, you may not be cooking, you may not be holding knives and forks, chopsticks, whatever your eating appliances. You might be too tired to cook. You might feel that I've got no food in the house and I'm just too tired to go out and I've missed a Waitrose delivery or your chosen supermarket. And then we layer on your lived experiences. And every single person watching this talk has got a different lived experience. You might have the same diagnosis on paper, but you've got different lived experiences. I won't read out this whole list, but take a moment to glance down and just see if it registers with you. Do any of those sort of fit into what your daily or your weekly or your monthly experiences are? Then we look at your lived experiences. They're really real for you. Even sometimes you come to whoever's office, a doctor, a physio, my clinical office, and you're saying, and sometimes people say, it sounds silly, but. And sometimes we're like, I don't think that's a thing, there's no literature, but it's valid for you and it's what you're experiencing. So your lived experiences are valid, real for you, they make you a bit sad and blue. So what we want to do is aim on improving your symptoms. We don't want to assume the food is the problem, but some people do, and this is okay, this is where you're at. And it's really easy. And actually, in my own history, I did the same. So we then start cutting foods out, or even whole food groups. Then we might start reducing our serving sizes of the meals we have, or our snacks. We might start reducing the frequency of our meals and our snacks. So we're reducing our food intake. We might also be under really good clinical care. And for a process of decisions in your clinical care, it might lead to being put on, if you like, or suggested or advised to follow a common restrictive diet. And we've got the list there. And again, take a moment to think, have you been suggested to follow this diet, or have you experimented yourself? Are you following these diets at the moment? You may have been medically prescribed this diet by a medical doctor. A dietitian or a nutrition has advised you that this might be helpful for the time being. Might be self-directed because you've looked at Google and you think, wow, this sounds like it's going to solve my problems. People are reporting symptom improvement. Or it might be suggested by the helpful friend who we've all got. And they say, do you know, this worked for me, you should try it. And then there's our other bracket of foods. We have miscellaneous foods. That's just, you know, the oddballs out there that for you, you're going to restrict because you feel that they trigger symptoms. And then we have specific IgE food allergies. We also have belief systems, and that means many things to many people, but it's sort of things like someone might believe a vegan diet is healthier for you, or any other dietary process that comes into what you might align with bigger values, ethical, sustainability, etc. And then, of course, we have ethical and religious grounds for following a diet, and these are absolutely valid, and there's no judgment if you're following a diet for religious beliefs. No one is going to ever ask you to change that. So we might go from consuming all these wonderful, lovely foods to eating fewer foods, having a picture of only 2, 3, 4 foods in smaller portions, and here we are, we're following a restrictive diet. So short-term potential outcomes is your symptoms might actually get better, and you might think, wow, I found the thing, and you might sort of feel, I'm healthier, I've got more energy, my bowels are better, this is really good. And you've also got a sense of a really positive action plan, and it's very empowering to be given something you can do that makes you feel it's a positive step. It also gives some people a sense of control, because when you're living with symptoms, especially if you don't understand why you've got these symptoms, and even your clinical care team are like, we're not sure, you can control it. It's something that you can keep as your own, and it's yours to nurture for your health, and so you've got control when sometimes you've got no control of anything with your health. And then this last one, reduction of medications, what I mean by this is sometimes if we restrict foods to manage symptoms and our symptoms improve, you may go to your doctor and say, do you know, I'm not constipated, so medication for constipation might get taken out of your medical care plan because you're not constipated. And there's some other medications that may be altered by your medical doctor because you've sort of change the pathways, shall we say, of your physiology. However, what we know in both clinical research, literature, so our evidence, but also clinical observations, when you see client after client after client and you talk to your peers in your sort of nutrition profession, you really get a picture of the negative effects of following restricted diets. So what we're looking at is all these things on this list. You might start to have an intake that's insufficient to meet your macronutrients, your micronutrients. You form the picture of malnourishment or malnutrition. You'll even potentially have changes in appetite. So you might think, I'm not as hungry, or I'm really, really hungry, I could eat a horse. And then naturally, as you restrict food, you're going to reduce your fiber intake. This is then going to alter your gut microbiome diversity, so all of your wonderful gut bugs and yeasts that hopefully are playing an important role for you, they start to maybe not work so hard for you. And in part of that, particularly linked to how your fibers are digested by your gut microbiota and producing short-chain fatty acids, which I could do a whole day's talk on, you're going to start reducing short-chain fatty acid production. You're then going to actually start developing more food intolerances. And some people don't understand, it's like a little bit of an oxymoron. If I've taken foods out, why do I then feel I need to restrict more foods? And it's simply because of all of this cycle with our change in physiological responses. We might also start reducing fluid intake for many mechanisms. And you might start developing a fear of food. This is very multi-layered, and at this junction I would say if this rings true for you, we do have Becky over there, speak to her later if you've got specific questions on that process. But it really comes down to you've taken food out, you've believed this is better for you, you're still struggling. And then it's a fear of, I don't know what to eat, I don't know if I should be eating something. Is this not? Oh, it did change, sorry. And we have to really respect our body and understand how the human body works and what it needs to function well. So when we start restricting foods a lot, we do have the potential, and I say potential because it's not an absolute because you're all very different, of physiological changes. We might find that things like metabolism slows down. Our blood pressure regulation might start getting altered, which is very tricky for someone with POTS. It's already got a little bit of an uncooperative blood pressure profile. We might start affecting our hunger hormones, and the specific ones are ones that I can never say, which is hilarious to my clients, ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone that makes us feel hungry. And then we have the satiety hormone, leptin. And then again, we've got the gut microbiota, and then we alter our gut motility, so quite often you might have slower motility, or it might even speed up, and you might find you've got bowel urgency and you don't know why. And then we've got more food intolerances. And then clinically, you might start delving into the picture of reduced bone density, especially if you're restricting for a long time. Menstrual disturbances for some women, again, not all women, but some women because of that hormone disruption. And then changes to body composition. Body composition being fats, bone, fluid ratios, dehydration, and increased anxiety. So the potential symptoms experienced are all of these. And again, I'm not going to read them out, but take a second just to reflect. Do you notice any of these? Because they might be the symptoms that you started avoiding foods to sort out in the first place. We focus on the whole body, so just draw your attention to the whole body, and then we're stuck in the cycle. We've got symptom management, we've restricted foods, and then we've got some symptom relief. So we restrict more foods, and then we get intolerant to more foods, and then we restrict more foods, and then we have increased symptoms, and then we go around and around. So we need to break the cycle. The only way you can break the cycle is identifying you're in the cycle. And I could sit in clinic and tell you, oh, but you need to recognize yourself that potentially are you in the cycle? Is this relevant to your own health and your journey? Talk to your medical care team first. Then seek support from your outward health professionals, your other modalities, your MDT team. We don't want to restrict foods you do not need to. Restrictive diets can be used as a strategy at all. So myself, clinical nutrition, registered dietitians, and some doctors might put you on short-term, like 1 week to 1 month. And this is a valid strategy as a clinical tool, but short-term only. And we want to start keeping food and symptom diaries, because we're never going to know what's the profile for you and how to get foods back in the diet if we don't know what's going on with food and symptoms. And sometimes for love nor money, we just can't remember, so let's write it down. If you do have to eliminate a diet for a particular reason, we want to do this under supervision. And we must remember part of breaking the cycle is food reintroduction slowly under supervision. So the first part of breaking the cycle is let's just be a little kind to ourselves. If we've got someone nearby, say, can I just have a hug right now? Or just a bit of self-care. And then just acknowledge these 3 factors for yourself. And this again, if these things are a challenge for you or trigger you, then you're very much going to be stepping into Becky's world, and you might want to sort of seek support from that world. But we want to acknowledge that whatever fear you might have, or if you're uncomfortable, this is really valid for you. And honour your choices that you've made to this point. So if you're sitting there thinking, oh no, maybe I'm not helping by restricting food, just think it's okay, because I've done best by myself to this point. And then we've got a wonderful opportunity to maybe help you improve going forward so that you don't stay in the cycle. So when we're breaking the cycle, this is our pathway. So we want support from a healthcare professional. It might look like medical doctor, dietitian, nutritionist, eating disorder specialist, and health psychologist. I may have excluded some people, but these would be the key people. We want to make sure that these are the dietary diversity important factors. Firstly, make sure you're not allergic, because we absolutely don't want you to start trying to put foods in that you do have an allergy to. And they don't have to be the common allergies. It can be something that may be to the general population quite random, but maybe an EDS a little bit more common. So you'd see an allergist. We'd want to assess nutrient status, individual needs. Again, you're all very different. You're the human and then the zebra from my previous talk if you tuned in. We want to get you advice on your adequate nutrition intake, because it's going to be different for you, to your neighbour, to your friend. Advice on food reintroduction. And we need managing for triggering foods. And this can be managed well, but it needs to be done under supervision. Navigating safe food choices, and then the barriers of food prep, and then working on increasing diversity. These are the key questions clinicians should be asking, we do in clinic, and you can also ask yourself, and you can go to your GP and say, do you know, I have actually been restricting my diet, and I just want to check these, please. And you can read through those, and they're the keys that are like the cornerstones in nutritional science to make sure your body has ample for your onward physiological functions. So now what do we do? Remember in your head a little mantra of single, small, slow. Single, small, slow. Single is 1 food at a time. Small is a bite, a mouthful, a teaspoon, whatever measurement makes sense for you. And at this juncture, I'd say as well, if measuring food is a red flag for your own journey and you're tallying into Becky's realm, discuss this with a professional that can help you, because once we start measuring food and tracking food, you might open up your own can of worms, shall we say. And slow being 3 to 6 days or to 1 month, depending on the food we're wanting to reintroduce. So a safe, sustainable way forward is supervision, supervision, supervision is the message. Question allergy. Oral tolerance is, it lingers into allergy, but really what we're meaning is, are you safe and able to chew and swallow your foods without concern? So if you feel that you do not have what is comfortable for you as oral tolerance, speak to your doctor, ear, nose and throat specialist, check you're safe to start swallowing foods. You pause at any time, keep a food symptom diary like we've already said, monitor your symptoms. And you know, if you're thinking I'm going to start little by little, introduce foods, and you're thinking, oh, this is not working for me, a bit scary, just stop and pause. It's okay, nothing's going to happen. You'll just revert back. You wouldn't have lost any time. So pause. If you're starting to consume a new food and you're feeling that it's not well tolerated, this is okay. It doesn't mean that you will not be able to tolerate it. It means that at the moment, let's just stop, let's just pause, leave it for a week, a month, whatever feels comfortable for you, and then retry again. If something's well tolerated, hurrah, and increase quantity slowly and frequency slowly. And it's very, very important to note that you may experience more bloating, because if you go back to your little gut bacteria haven't been digesting things for you well and you start introducing them again, before we get to the place of re-establishing a better healthy microbiota, you might get some bloating, and bowel changes are to be expected. If you have increased pain or stop evacuating your bowels, you then pause from your reintroduction and tag into your medical care team, and then repeat with each new food. So your starting place, if you're thinking, I have been restricting foods, then actually I think it's going to be safe and valid for me to start reintroducing foods. It doesn't have to be scary. We're not talking about suddenly having a sweet potato or a bowl of beans. We're looking at increasing diet diversity. So remember that there's many things that contribute diet diversity. Herbs. Put a little bit of rosemary on your roast potato if you're having potatoes. You can even put a little basil in your tea. You're still going to get those polyphenols. And if you're consuming the whole leaf, they do contain some fibers. Spices, loose leaf tea, which is, I am a bit of a tea person. So these are a wonderful way to safely, it's liquid, but it's increasing the repertoire of the food and the beverages that you're having. And then coffee, people say, oh, don't have coffee. If you're caffeine sensitive or you've been told to eliminate caffeine from your diet by your doctor, then don't reintroduce it. But it is actually counted, it's a plant, so it's counted as a contribution to a plant-based diet, and it does contribute to dietary diversity. And then we've got the little small sprouted vegetables, broccoli sprouts, which is like the small version of the big broccoli, which is much, much friendly, less fearful than literally going, okay, I'm going to have some broccoli today. You just have a few little sprouts, you know. Rocket, which is the salad leaf green, very easy to digest, doesn't look much for you, and yet it does increase dietary diversity. And then your seeds, I would soak them if you haven't been having them for a long time. Dandelion root powder and artichoke powder, not many people consider, but they're really rich in some wonderful fiber types. Your gut loves them, your liver loves them, and it does count towards dietary diversity. So it's a lovely way to broaden your diet without feeling, oh, I've got to eat a bowl of beans. Plus, just draw your attention to this next slide, and this actually might be the key point in this topic. Focus on the food you miss and you really enjoy. Because if you're going to look at a food and think, oh, I want to eat you, you're probably going to have a better response to that food than something going, oh my God, I've been told or I've read that this is the food I have to start with. If you're not going to enjoy it, or you never liked it in the first place, then you're going to be triggering a stress response, and quite literally there's no point having it. So pick something you really like and then enjoy that. Thank you.